Hey everybody, and welcome to the final episode of Season 1 of Life Below the Surface. Unbelievable. This is your host, Josh Blaylock, and today we are taking a deep dive, quite literally, into the world below the surface of our exhibits here at Georgia Aquarium. I'm joined today by Lauren Rotstead, Manager of Dive Immersion, and Jonathan Langham, Manager of Dive Safety, to talk about their jobs that take them and their teams underwater in some of the world's largest exhibits every single day. Guys, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited you guys are here. This is the final episode, and we get to talk about something that's really cool and something that always excites the guests, other than, of course, seeing the animals, and that's seeing people in the water with the animals. And that's where you guys spend a majority of your time here. So it's obvious you both have some of the coolest jobs at the aquarium. And a lot of people are very jealous because I'm sure they're wondering how they can do this too. So I'm going to start off with just the most burning question. And Lauren, I'm going to start with you. How did you get started in your career? How did you become the manager of dive immersion at the largest aquarium in the Western Hemisphere?
Well, Josh, I took kind of a weird path to getting to be the manager of the dive immersion program here. My background actually starts in biology and geology, and I ended up getting a master's degree in maritime archaeology. And so I actually ended up working in shipwreck recovery and recording for a few years, and I realized that academia was not where my passion was, and I ended up kind of switching over to diving being my main focus. I ended up taking an internship here, actually underneath Jonathan. He was dumb enough to take me on as an intern. And I kind of never left. And so that's how I ended up here. Once I kind of realized my passion really lied in diving and being underwater, it just felt right to stay here and kind of expand my horizons there as opposed to continuing on in more of an academic fashion.
Gotcha. So actually, I've known you for a long time. Mm-hmm. I had no idea that you started off kind of like in archaeology. Like, did you ever find any treasure? Pirate ships, anything cool?
So, well, I can't tell you about the good stuff, but, no, I'm just kidding. Scout's honor. So what I did is I worked in the Great Lakes for a couple of years, and then I worked in North Carolina and South Carolina, and the program that I was with, we worked on Queen Anne's Revenge. So that's the shipwreck off of North Carolina, and it was supposedly or allegedly or has yet to be proven not to be Blackbeard's ship. And so my main work there while I was finishing up my degree was I was helping preserve artifacts coming off of that wreck.
I did a 7th, 8th, and 9th grade book report on Blackbeard. I'm obsessed with his story. That is absolutely, you've been holding out all these years. I had no idea. I'm actually kind of upset at you right now that you have not told me about that. That is really cool.
You never asked the specific question of what I was doing in 2014 to 2015 to 2016.
Okay, duly noted. That's fair.
She's being humble, Josh.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And that just, that's really cool because I've known you for a long time and I didn't even know that story. So for our guests, our everyday guests that come in here and think that this place is just about the exhibits or just about this or that, there is so much more. And that's why this podcast has been so cool. So I'm glad we're ending with kind of a story like that because I had no idea. That's really cool. And we're going to talk more and more about this and potentially, when season 2 comes around, we're going to get into a whole thing about pirate treasure. Yeah, I can already see it. Season 2, episode 3, Buried Treasure with Lauren Rotstead. All right, it's amazing. All right, so Jonathan, that's going to be tough to beat, buddy. You want me just to skip this one?
Oh, no.
Okay, all right, go. Fair enough. So, Jonathan, how did you get started? How did you end up here as the manager of dive safety, which, not going to lie, is probably one of the most critical jobs that we have here for guests and staff and things getting in the water?
So Josh, I took a kind of a different approach like Lauren did. My background before the aquarium was emergency medical services. And so, going to school for paramedic, I finished that and then I wanted to move to the big city and run, a lot more higher acuity calls. And so I moved up to Atlanta, found out the aquarium was going to be built, and I said, man, I'm going to work there one day. I really want to be on that dive team. I didn't have the credentials just yet, and so I just continued my career in EMS, working for Grady EMS, which is the 911 provider here for the city of Atlanta. I worked up in like Sandy Springs, Roswell, Alpharetta area a lot. And then I'd say my coolest break for that was moving to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And I worked for them for 7 years and was on their critical care transport team, also on the helicopter. So, I got to live my dream as a flight paramedic, which is one of the top things that you can do in EMS. With that, I then took just a part-time maintenance diver position when our dolphin habitat opened up here. And from there, just worked my way up. And I was an advanced open water diver when I started here. Now I'm an instructor trainer. And, the aquarium has allowed me to do some very cool stuff with my diving career. Now, with my diving career, I've been obsessed with diving since I was in the 7th grade. My parents thought it was just a phase, is like they said. And my senior year of high school is when I said, look, I'm 18 and you don't have to sign for me anymore, and I'm just gonna go get my diving lessons. And so that was actually my senior present, was my diving lessons. And so I've been diving for over 20 years now. And, it was just very cool to have these two different paths merge like they did and to where I'm at now. And love what I do every day. It's truly a blessing to be here for the past 11 years.
That's really cool. Okay, so Lauren, you were basically an underwater Indiana Jones, and Jonathan, you were out saving lives all over the metro Atlanta area for a long time.
Yes.
And a helicopter.
And a helicopter, yeah, that's amazing, absolutely amazing. So with all of that being said, and looking at your path to the aquarium, and Jonathan, I'm gonna start with you. What does your day-to-day look like? What's an everyday task for the manager of dive safety?
So that's one of the neat things, and this is kind of like how it was in EMS, is no 2 day is the same. One day I might be at the pool doing swim tests, another day I might be out in the field doing rescue diver training. We also have the other, quote, unfun stuff, end quote, like all the admin and all the paperwork that we have to do. But that's minuscule for what we actually get to do here. Like what I try to do when I get here in the mornings is most of our dives are done in the mornings. And so I walk around to make sure all of our divers are needing what they need. I'll watch them dive from the windows. And then there's other times I just want to get in the water with them and to make sure that, they're all following proper procedures and, being safe and all that. So each day is different for me, and that's what I still really like about what I get to do versus, like how EMS, it was just, you never had 2 of the same days.
Very cool. All right, Lauren, same question to you. What does your day-to-day look like?
So my day-to-day is a little bit more probably consistent than Jonathan's is, because we do run guest programs. And so we run 365, we run a dive every day, we run a swim every day, and we also run cage dives every day. And so there are certain things that we have to hit every single day because we do have guests every single day. So again, we are a little bit more schedule oriented because we do the same thing every day to an extent. But kind of like Jonathan said, it is a little bit different for us every day because we do have different guests every day and we have different challenges every day. You're not going to get the same guest twice. You're not ever going to have the same dive twice. The animals are never going to act the exact same way twice. And so it just keeps things kind of interesting. You never know what you're going to get every time you go underwater. It's going to be a little bit different. And so it kind of keeps you on your toes. And I've got a pretty large team, just like Jonathan's got a much larger team with volunteers, but my staff team, we're sitting at about 30 right now. And so it's really interesting having that many people that are all dive masters and instructors, come from an amazing array of backgrounds, just as diverse as me and Jonathan, and watching them all come together, work as a team for the same goal, but they all do it in different ways. And so that's my big thing each day, is kind of making sure that people who have a different way of doing things, that are all really good at it, can do it together and get the same result.
Right. So, but with what you guys were just talking about, You guys both use the word different a lot, like no 2 days are the same. Every day is different. Your teams are different, volunteers, employees, that kind of deal. So when you talk about every day being different, I can also think that there's probably some difficulty in there as well, that you guys just mentioned a lot, and your jobs have a huge, enormous amount of responsibility. So Lauren, what would you say that like the hardest part or the most difficult part of your job is?
I would say the hardest part is making sure that the team is prepped for anything, right? Once you're underwater, you lose the ability to have that kind of back and forth communication, right? You can use hand signals, you can look at each other, you can wave people down, but when there is an emergency, you have to know what to do without discussing it. There is no, hey, can you help me with this? Or, oh, this person needs help with this. You have to figure out what it is. Sometimes people don't tell you what's wrong. You have to figure out what's wrong, and then you have to figure out how to handle it while still making sure everyone else underwater is okay. And so I would say that the biggest challenge for probably anybody that works with guests or divers or anyone underwater is making sure that you know how to handle anything underwater without hesitation, right? Because there is no back and forth talking. You figure it out, they're not gonna tell you what's wrong, and you have to learn how to see the signs before it becomes an issue. Because once something's an issue underwater, you've kind of already gone past, you're already in a dangerous area. And so I would say the biggest thing for my team is learning and teaching and getting everybody into a place where they are so prepared and so used to the idea and the signs that something might be going wrong is to preemptively look for it. They are already there, they're already taking care of it before it's an issue. And I would say that's probably our biggest challenge, is getting people to the place of not responding, but preemptively taking care of something before it becomes an issue. And that's it's just something that comes with training and time, and a lot of that comes from Jonathan's training, honestly. And it comes with practice and just exposure to diving and guests and exhibits and animals and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's a really nice lead into Jonathan. What is the hardest part of your day?
So the hardest part of my day is, dealing with I have multiple roles that I have to play, but diver safety is the ultimate, like the number one. And, when we discuss about human factors and psychological skills in diving, we have close to 300 divers here at the aquarium. And, whether it's volunteers or staff, it's very easy with the amount of diving we do, that you could see complacency. And so, actually making sure people are following proper procedures, and being safe. It's a fun place to be, staff and volunteers alike. They love getting into Oceans Voyager every morning and taking care of our animals. And sometimes that they don't need to be getting in the water. And I have to be that bad person. My team has to be the bad people to say, hey, no, you can't get in the water today. Hey, it'll be here tomorrow. And so having to be that bad person sometimes is probably the worst part of my job.
Right, but at the end of the day, it's all about safety.
It's all about safety, yeah. And what I also tend to think is I love what I do so much. I love diving so much. I have no problem calling a dive because I want to be able to do it the next day and then the next day after that. And so, yeah, it's not fun to have to be that person sometimes, but hey, it's worth it in the end.
Right. That's very, very good points there, because of course you want, not just the guests, but you also want the staff and the volunteers to have good, memorable experiences as well. And it just takes one accident to really, to really kind of mess things up there. So in the spirit of awesome and memorable experiences, we do some really cool programs here. Lauren, I know you mentioned the swim and the dive in Ocean Voyager, as well as the Sharks cage dive, but we also have some really special groups. They get to, and probably for the one opportunity they have to see these animals up close, is through some of the programs that you and your team offer. I know especially with some of our veterans programs and children's programs, they're extremely special, and honestly, they don't get as much credit as they deserve with how absolutely beautiful they are. Can you just kind of take us into some of the really cool programs or things that we do, or that you've, some anecdote experience that you've had from those cool programs?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do every Wednesday, or almost every Wednesday, we do have a veterans immersion program, which is where we have a group of veterans that come through and they do a program with us, whether it be a cage dive, a dive on Ocean Voyager, or a swim with us. It's usually the swim, just because we have a larger proportion of people that aren't divers, which is a really amazing experience. We also have a group that is really amazing to kind of, one that's been with us for a really long time is Shepherd Center. And this is a spinal cord injury center, right? Spinal cord injury?
Yeah, spinal cord and brain injury.
Spinal cord and brain,
Yep.
Thank you. So Shepherd Center is a spinal cord and brain injury trauma center, and they've been coming here for years. It's a really, really interesting group. They're great. And they come here, and for the most part, they are either paraplegics, quadriplegics, or some sort of, obviously, spinal injury. And it's a really amazing group. They use it as part of their therapy, really, is they'll go to the pool before they come here, and they'll work on their snorkeling, and these are people who are recovering from traumatic injuries. Some people may be on their way to walking again, and some people know that they're not. And it's really, really cool to see people, some of them are 14, 15, 16. It's a really amazing experience to see a 15-year-old kind of look at you with a smile on their face, knowing that they're not gonna walk again, and still just be happy, and they're excited to be here, and they'll let you know what to do to help them, but they also wanna kind of push their limits and see what they can do on their own. Watch them before they hop in the water, and then see the difference after they hop in the water, and see kind of what they could do and how excited they are, and just what an experience it is for them. It's a really rewarding, but also just mostly rewarding. I mean, I think it's great for them because they're excited, they get to see some stuff, but I think it's even more rewarding for our team. It's easy for you to forget how special this is because we're here every day, right? And then you see it from someone else's perspective that's been through just a really tough time, and see how amazing it is for them. It kind of brings it home at how really cool it is. And so Shepherd Center is definitely one of our team's favorite to see come through.
That's amazing. Absolutely beautiful. Jonathan, do you have anything to add to that question as well? Anything you've experienced over the years with those programs?
Yeah, so I was in dive immersion as well before I was in my current role, and so actually getting to watch this program, how it was then so many years ago to where it is and how it's grown now has just been amazing. And even now we have expanded into the field with our military salute program, and now being able to take these veterans, off the coast of Jupiter, Florida, which, by the way, if you've never dove Jupiter, it's an amazing place to dive. Watching this grow now into field opportunities is it's so cool to be able to see this, and then getting to meet these veterans, and then watching them, when we first meet them, they're just very quiet and reserved. And then you get them in the water a few dives, and now you just can't get them to shut up. And it's great. It's just watching that transition for them is just amazing.
I absolutely love it, because in a lot of previous episodes, we've talked about quite a bit how Georgia Aquarium is not just Atlanta, how we've been to Africa, Indonesia, all over the world with conservation research initiatives, but hearing this one now too, from Atlanta down to the Atlantic off of Jupiter, Florida, that's a whole nother kind of realm there where our footprint expands outside of the state of Georgia. And that's a really cool thing. I actually wasn't aware that we did that. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So with all the cool things that we just talked about, and Lauren, put you right on the spot, rapid fire answer, what's like the coolest thing, besides for meeting me, what has been like the coolest part of your career here at Georgia Aquarium?
I would say the field work. That's an easy one for me. I would say, I mean, the passion for me lies underwater. And as much as being in the exhibit is amazing and working in the exhibit is cool, I mean, there's nothing like getting in the ocean and doing work out in the ocean. So anytime I get to go in the field, that's it for me. That's it, 100%.
Okay. With that being said, let's double down on that. What's your favorite spot that you've been to for work?
For work. I mean, I just went to Jupiter. That was really cool. I mean, I would say that's the best, like, kind of like pretty diving I've ever seen. But I went on a Hera trip. That was pretty amazing. That's where they do studies on a dolphin population in Florida as well. That was pretty cool just because it's something I didn't know about. I've never been a part of something like that. And so that was a really cool learning opportunity. But I would say probably dive-wise, Jupiter was the best diving one.
Very cool. Jonathan, same question. Coolest experience you can think of?
So I have a hard time nailing down just one cool experience. You mentioned Indonesia. I was on that Indonesia trip, and that's the furthest the aquarium has ever sent me. Where we were doing those health assessments on wild whale sharks out in Cendrawasih Bay with Dr. Al Dove and his team. So that, spending 3 weeks in Indonesia, I mean, I can't have any complaints for that. I mean, I'd have to say that's probably one of the most coolest thing I've done here yet. But going to the flower gardens off of Texas, and being on a liveaboard for a week, 120 miles off the coast, doing reef studies out there, being able to go to coral spawning, putting 9 hours underwater one day on a rebreather, and then watching these coral spawn, which is actually happening right now as well. Doing several of those types of trips with coral reefs, the trip to Jupiter with our veterans.
Stop, give it one. Just start right back up at the coral reef spawning again.
The coral reef spawning, so down in the Keys, putting 9 hours underwater on a rebreather in one day, not waking up, but coming up from the surface, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just sitting here looking at the stars floating in the Atlantic Ocean. I was like, man, this is just so cool that I'm doing this. So, I mean, I would agree with Lauren too. The field work is really amazing. But then also, here at the aquarium, being able to save lives, like having that feeling of, hey, I've got to help that person, and, knowing that that person is okay now, and us knowing that the skills that we have developed here, to be able to help people. I mean, that's one of the coolest parts of my job.
That's awesome. So you guys have mentioned, Jupiter, Florida, the Florida Keys, Indonesia, places like that. We have our own kind of little inland ocean right here in Atlanta, and probably some of the coolest dive spots for some novice divers that they're ever going to get a chance to see. Whale sharks, mantas, bowmouth guitarfish, things like that. So let's say you had the choice, Lauren. Someone came in one day and said, Lauren, you get to go dive in your favorite habitat. Where are you going?
I would say Ocean Voyager. It's the largest. You've got a lot of kind of space to kind of move around and just enjoy your dive. It's nice and easy. And I'm a sucker for the mantas. So that's an easy one for me.
Awesome. Jonathan, same question. If you were just going to go on a fun dive, any habitat you wanted when you came into work, you get to choose. Where are we going to find you?
So I would agree with Lauren on Ocean Voyager, because it's just so big and the animals in there. But if I had to choose a smaller habitat, it would be our tropical diver habitat, our volcano habitat, which is in the tropical diver gallery. We do change those out, and being able to get the dive with those just those different species of fish as we change them out is very neat.
Very, very cool. All right, so let's talk to, real quick, the next generation of divers. Jonathan, I'm gonna ask you this one. If say some young kid out there, like my nephew, he's 8 years old. I promised him that when he turned 12, that Uncle Josh was gonna get him scuba certified. What's your best advice to anyone out there that, old, young, wants to give diving a try?
So one of my favorite terms is I like to nerd out. And so I do that with diving. I do that with the other sports that I'm heavily involved in. Just start. at the basic and just work your way up, dive a lot, immerse yourself into the different articles, and even now with social media, just all the different pages that you can follow. Learn as much as you can, never stop learning. I have to date probably over 2,000 dives now, been diving for over 20 years. Do I know everything? No, I don't know everything. Have I gone up like really high in my dive career? Yeah, I mean, Lauren and I, the most recent thing we did was take our instructor trainer course, which, we're now allowed to certify people to become dive instructors. But even going past that, on the higher end type diving, like I like to cave dive, I like to do something called technical diving, which means I can go deeper and stay down longer. I like having all those different specialties. And so that's what I would recommend is, definitely going and getting your open water certification, that we like to call it. But if you decide that this is something that you want to do, for a career, move yourself up in the diving industry as much as you can. And on top of that, it's not just the diving, but also learning, like I've taken a big interest into leadership and management. I love developing people. One of my favorite success stories, as you might would say, would actually be Lauren. I mean, she was my second intern that I brought in, and now we're at the same level. It's just so cool to see that.
And I'd say too, after meeting Lauren, the accomplishment of just having her climb the ladder is very, it's a problem. I'm kidding. Lauren, you're one of my favorites.
Low. The chances were so low.
So no, that was a great answer, and I don't think Lauren has probably much to add to that. You covered quite a bit. So Lauren, I'm going to ask you this one. Let's say you are already scuba certified and you're taking a trip to Atlanta. Tell us about, you've mentioned them. Talk about the different programs that your team offers here and how they can meet you in person.
So there's 3 different options you can have if you want to come on over to the Dive Immersion program. We have a dive and ocean voyager, in that one you do have to be open water certified, just like Jonathan was saying. That's the base level of diving certification, meaning you're an autonomous diver, and you just have to have that basic level. You don't have to have a whole bunch of dives under your belt. We provide everything for you. All you have to bring is yourself, a bathing suit, and that little certification card. We provide all of the gear, the wetsuit, we do a whole briefing, we have dive masters in the water with you, along with a videographer, and we edit your video for you while you're in the water. And so it's truly like 5-star diving. We take care of everything. You're guaranteed to see at least one whale shark. If you don't, let us know. They should be in there. So we really enjoy taking people diving, and we really hope that people see that. And so we try to make sure that our guests see that every single time we hop in. Your other option in Ocean Voyager is to do the swim. The swim is going to be on the surface, and you're going to have on a life vest, so you don't need to be certified to do that. And we do recommend that you know how to swim, but technically, just as long as you're okay with getting in the water and floating, you're okay. It's very zen. You don't have to really do anything. We kind of just float around, and we go nice and slow. And I would recommend the swim if you're here for the manta rays and the whale sharks, if that's really what your passion is, what you're here to see. They actually prefer the upper parts of the water column. And so that if that's kind of your thing, if that's what you want to get close to, I would actually recommend the swim for you, because they do like to be up there and they will get super close to you. And then your third option is going to be our cage dive. So this is going to be our newest option. And this, you do not have to be certified for it as well. And you can hop in the cage, and we dunk you in the cage into the sharks exhibit. So this is on surface supplied air, and you're going to have a full face mask on, but it does have comms. So you will be able to communicate with your instructor who's in the cage with you and with the other people in the cage. And so it'll be just like you see kind of in all the pictures of cage diving. You're going to literally be standing in a cage with a big full face mask on, and it'll be surface supplied air, and it's pretty cool. We take you on a track, and you get to go through the whole exhibit, and we take a video of that as well for you.
Very cool. And I know you both know this, and I think I've touched on it in some previous episodes before. But the cage dive is near and dear to my heart as being part of the unbelievable design team that had the challenge of how do you create we have two cages. How do you create a 2-cage dive in a singular habitat and have people get up close and personal, basically go on an underwater safari inside a giant habitat full of large sharks? That honestly would probably be an entire episode again for season 2. Season 2 is going to be awesome. But yes, because that story of how the cage was designed, we traveled out to Denver. We tried a cage there. We went to Florida. We tried a different cage program there. We saw what we liked, saw what we didn't like. We flew out to then California to see our cages being built. And really cool, the same kind of firm that built the Harry Potter rides at Universal Studios also built our shark cage attraction. So it's a really cool thing, and I could go on and on about that experience, but we wanted to make that one as cool and as special as possible. And I think from what guest reviews and just the smiles of people's faces after they take their masks off, that one's quite successful.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Well, Jonathan, Lauren, thank you guys so much for joining me. This was a great way to wrap up season 1. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed all the episodes this season, and we hope to come back with even more incredible stories. If you want to hear more, please leave us a review or drop us a comment on any of our social channels. And be sure to visit us. We love having our guests come here to Georgia Aquarium, where you guys get a chance to see and experience these animals in this amazing facility up close and personal. I have personally loved connecting with all of you. So this is your host, Josh, signing off.